Thank you, Vicky. With me today is the co-author of the book titled Contemporary Terrorism. She has been involved in research with her husband, William Gutteridge, on the topic of terrorism. She is Juanita Gutteridge. Welcome, Juanita.
Thank you.
I'd just like to speak on terrorism. Give the audience some insight on the topic.
Terrorism is a growing problem in today's world. It has greatly increased in scale and sophistication over the last 2 decades. It has developed from the simple lynching methods of the American Ku Klux Klan to the precision bombings of the Palestinian Liberation Organization.
That's interesting.
Early terrorists could derail a train, but they did not have, like today at their mercy, jumbo jets carrying many more people. The derailing of a train could kill a number of people, but when an airliner is blown out of the sky, everybody dies. This causes for greater loss of human life, and it installs maximum amount of fear.
Could you give an example of how economic crisis creates terrorist activity?
Of course. Economic crisis accentuates the unevenness of development of economic growth, which is followed by stagnation. Italy was probably more altered than any other country in Europe by the economic boom of the 1950s. The economic slowdown that followed had more dramatic effects.
I didn't know that.
No. By the end of the decade, unemployment was high, and Italian universities were graduating thousands of idealistic youths, no jobs, suited to their skills and interests, and the economic slowdown undermined the inefficient public order and social service systems. This tempted activists to create their own vigilante justice known as the Red Brigades, and they challenged the government and succeeded in a number of terroristic actions such as murder, bombings, and kidnapping.
Will you explain why then terrorism has been so successful in the past 3 years? Decades.
Yes, of course. I knew it was decades. The growth of terrorism is due to the lack of strength and willpower to counter the terrorist activity. Take, for example, the 1972 Olympic Games in Munich. The Black September terrorists from Palestine seized Israeli athletes from their quarters. They were supported by French and German sympathizers, and the event caused a commotion. The Bavarian police failed to achieve the release of the hostages, which increased the fear of terrorism. The country had a new crisis to deal with, and they weren't prepared. They now had to find a way to deal with the terrorists. Terrorism exists as well because of support of nationalist followers. One such follower of the Brazilian urban guerrilla, Carlos Marighella. He succeeded in having a book published under the title of Handbook of Urban Guerrilla Warfare. In this collection, he clearly outlines exactly what it takes to be an urban guerrilla. It also teaches how to excel at being a terrorist. This, of course, encourages future terrorists and makes them believe that the cause is legitimate, and they think that they are freedom fighters, united for one cause, but they do not realize that the physical harm they do, it is one thing to want freedom and another to involve innocent people in the process of obtaining freedom. They use ruthless weapons and methods to attack civilians. It's just abominable.
What is it then that motivates a terrorist?
Well, a terrorist is motivated by passionate idealism and convictions that sustain many of them. The typical terrorist tends to be of above average intelligence and education, highly resourceful.
I always thought that terrorists were psychotic.
Oh, quite the contrary, quite the contrary. I feel that the morals of a whole generation are deteriorating at a steady rate. Terrorist ideals have many supporters that justify that there's a need for freedom fighters to ameliorate their social, economic, and political stand in the country.
What must the government do in order to put down terrorism then?
If a government wants to be successful when faced with a terrorist emergency, it should not stop its daily job of amelioration and reform. Everything possible should be done to prevent the serious disruption and paralysis of social and economic life. This is what terrorists so ardently seek. It is easier to get maximum attention this way. The government should not concede its reform policy under terrorist duress. This would produce contempt for the normal political processes of the law. Most nations today, after much experience, can sustain and put down a terrorist attack. Policies have been created to deal with terrorism. Airport security has become more sophisticated and the government is taking control.
What are your views on the recent Gulf crisis?
Oh, well, I believe that the recent attack of Kuwait by the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein was in fact a type of a full-scale terrorist takeover of a country. Kuwait could be considered as the hostage, quote, and Iraq is the, quote, terrorist. Hussein devastated a whole population and the extent of the damage has not yet been discovered. He claimed that it was all done in the name of God and it was justifiable because of this. Could you just believe that? It's just terrible.
It really is. In conclusion, what are your thoughts?
Well, it is clearly evident that no hemisphere of the world is free from the fears of terrorism. All countries and all types of people have been scared at one time or another by terrorism and terrorist activity. It is hard to fathom being unsafe in your own country, especially a democratic one like our own, of course. If the world is to overcome this global terrorism problem, it must learn to accept and work out its problems, whether social, political, or religious, in order to avoid further rebellion. The one solution that seems almost unbelievable is unity, of course. It's hard to fathom a country or the world becoming one. Is that not true? But I think if it is essential for a country to have unity in order to free itself from rebellion. And I don't think the world will ever be free from this type of destruction because it's just too overwhelming for everybody.
Well, thank you, Miss Juanita. And back to you, Vicky, in chat room. Thank you and have a good evening. Tune in next week to Refugees. Thank you.